Welcome back, everybody. This is Chase for the Title. I'm your host, JB, alongside my cohorts. Chase, say hello.
Hello.
Steve Arino in his Ferrari hat.
That's right, baby. Hello. Good morning.
Maybe we're going to be talking about some good things for Ferrari this morning. Let's see. Dr. Bill.
Good morning, everybody.
Dr. Bill just woke up 20 minutes ago, but he's with us.
Yep. I watched the race in my sleep.
And you know what? At one point during the course of this race, I thought we were going to have another sleeper, but thanks to a safety car about midway through the race, things closed up a little bit. But off the top, we have to say, spoiler alert, there's a new reigning king in victories in Formula One. Well, I should say that. Step aside, Michael. I should take it back. Lewis Hamilton joins Michael Schumacher top of the podium of podiums with 91 victories today. Congratulations, Lewis. Another dominant performance by Hamilton and the Mercedes team. At one point, looked like a little bit in doubt because Mr. Bottas got off to a great start, and then something happened along the way to victory, a DNF because of an engine problem. Max Verstappen, great race, finished second. And then Daniel Ricciardo. Hello, Renault. Oh, goodbye, Renault, because he's leaving after this season to go to McLaren, who's yet to be on the podium since 1927. So let's talk a little bit about this race. Chase, what were your first impressions?
So I think I started watching around lap 11. It was around the time where Bottas DNF'd. But after that disappointment, I thought it was a pretty good race to watch. Especially, I was surprised how many engine failures there were. It seemed like every 10 laps or so, there was a new person DNFing, whether it was like Ocon or like Norris or Albon. It just seemed like it was everyone. But
yeah, you're right. It did seem like they kept calling in an engine issue, but it was weird because they say they have engine problems, but they would still race at race speed. So there's obviously some portion of the engine that wasn't functioning.
It was a power block.
Yeah, because I think what it was, you know how, well, yeah, because they're all hybrid engines now. They're hybrid V6s, I believe. And if you can't harness like the electric part of that, you're not going to get the same spring and you're not going to get the same speed on the straights.
And so you're right. That seemed to be happening with 3 or 4 different cars over the course of sort of like in the early 20s or so of the laps. It just seemed like they were starting to have that. And then they were trying to get them to fix it sort of on board, which was kind of weird. Steve, what did you think about that?
Yeah, they were. I know they were resetting quite a bit for Lando, trying to reset his steering wheel to re-engage the power block. It was interesting. I did hear some of the analysis saying that based on the course, based on the way it's designed in the hills, not having the initial practice was probably key to that, so that they could kind of figure out how it should be set. It was disappointing to see a lot of very good drivers obviously not be able to finish, but at the same point, it did give us some diversity in the top 5, which is always great. Once Bottas goes out, then you realize, wow, we could have somebody other than Verstappen and Hamilton on podium, which was fun.
Yeah, that's true. Although once Hamilton gets in front, he's like Secretariat, man. He does not look back. And at one point before I think it was this full safety car, not the virtual safety car, he was 8 seconds ahead of Verstappen and almost a minute ahead of Ricciardo in third, Dr. Bill.
He did pass a minute. It was like a minute and 2 seconds.
Right. I mean, unbelievable, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I was going to echo what Steve was saying as far as the teams had to kind of just go off their gut instinct because they did not have the data that they would have obtained from the practices on Friday, which were totally rained out. They just had an hour, or I think it was an hour, in the morning to try to figure out what the heck they're going to do. And also, it was amazing to watch Hamilton's gap times to Verstappen after the Norris safety car restart. I thought, well, maybe Verstappen's going to be able to stay with him and make it competitive. And it just went from 1.2 to 2.5 to 3. It just was like, this is crazy.
Can't keep up.
And I think they both were on relatively fresh tires, so the tires weren't a factor. I think they were both on similar tires. So he just was just pulling away, not even anyone even close.
And again, I think we should talk about this a little bit more, because when you think about it, Mercedes spends all this money on 2 cars, 2 drivers, and tries, and by all accounts, all these teams try to do everything they can to keep the equipment and the setups competitive between these 2 cars. And granted, Hamilton's a super driver, but Bottas is a terrific, talented driver as well, and is outqualified his teammate there. And this is a sport where timing is so important that it goes into the thousandths of a second, right? Often, very, very often, it's hundreds of a second between first and second, third or fourth, whatever. Think about what we said and what Chase said earlier, just a few minutes ago. At one point in time, Hamilton was up over a minute over the third place car. A minute. And 8.5 seconds over Verstappen, who, by the way, right near the end of the race, got the fastest lap in the race and get to that point.
Yeah, final lap.
This guy is a minute faster than the third place car, and he's 8 to 10 seconds faster, and probably could have been even more if you wanted to push it, than the second place Red Bull car. What does that tell you either about how good his car is or how great this driver is? Sometimes it's hard to separate, but I don't know.
Well, you could say, as you were saying, that the Mercedes cars are essentially identical. So there you eliminate that variable. So then you're only down to the driver. And, for whatever reason, Hamilton has just way outperformed Bottas.
And then you go further down the grid, and of course we got the Ferrari conundrum. Well, Vettel continues to get. Today he got passed actually by a station wagon that was on its way to Hamburg. Managed to wander out on the track by mistake, and they go, Vettel's going to get passed. What is it? It's a Volvo. I mean, what is he doing?
And then we turn it into bumper cars.
Right. And then the flying Finn Kimi throws up some stones, and it hits Dr. Bill's favorite guy, Grosjean, in the finger. I think I got a broken finger. You don't have a broken finger. I think it's broken. It's not broken.
I can't feel it.
He's a tough guy. Grosjean's a tough guy.
But where did Grosjean finish today, Dr. Bill?
In the points. He just pushed those black and white flags as much as he could. He was right on the edge of getting in trouble with the teacher, but he used that to his advantage to get in the points.
And it was nice. I don't know if you guys stuck around for the podium proceeding, but it was a nice moment where Mick Schumacher stuck around for the race and was able to give Lewis a helmet that his father wore when he raced him with Mercedes in the early 90s, which I thought was pretty touching. Because by all accounts, we don't really know much about Michael's condition, but Jean Todt went to see him a couple months ago, and said he's fighting and everything, but by all accounts, it doesn't sound. I guess the Dr. Bill, they're doing some kind of stem cell experimental thing on Schumacher. You forget. Michael turned 51 in January. He's only 51 years old, and injury goes back to what, 2014 or something?
Yeah.
Just a terrible thing, but it also makes you appreciate how great Hamilton is when you think about how great Schumacher was, right?
Yeah.
So, Chase, let's talk about your boys in the mid-pack. You got to move up a little bit because of the activity. Let's talk about the Perez's and the Ricardos and the Gasly's and the Sainz, and Albon actually went out, unfortunately, but let's talk about your boys there.
I want to talk about Albon first, because I am a fan of Albon, and he's really good at placing the car, I don't know what happened between him and Kvyat and that penalty that he got for it. He knocked the wing off for people who didn't see, but it was of Kvyat, and it was just the weirdest thing, because that's just not Albon. Yes, he's aggressive, but he's usually pretty good at putting his car in the right spot. But
why did they pit him at lap 8? I'm thinking, here we go again.
I don't. He seems to like to do this thing where he changes tires very early and then works his way up the pack with hard tires.
Yep,
it's really weird, and I don't know why.
He likes to make it more difficult for himself because he finds it too easy. So if he looks like everybody else, anybody could do that, Dr. Bill.
He's better than Hamilton. He just doesn't let himself get up there.
Yeah, he should just drive on 3 wheels like Hamilton.
Nah, but otherwise, it was very interesting. Norris was in third up until he had that whole power failure, and then it was like just Racing Point and Renault that were battling it out. Ricciardo and Perez had really good fights throughout the entire thing. I was always watching the counter because I wanted Ricciardo to get that podium. But
I didn't think he was going to make it if they didn't get the safety car, because I thought Perez was going to catch him and pass him. But thankfully, the safety car happened, so he was able to pop in there, get new tires, and go. So that worked out perfectly for him.
I thought he was going to get passed on the safety car, like right off of that. I thought Perez was going to have it, and then Hülkenberg, who was pulled in last minute, qualified, I think, dead last. Yeah. Finished like 7th or 8th, which was 8th, yeah, which that was really good to watch. And he also got driver of the day for it. So good for him.
You think about that. Hülkenberg was literally, he was having coffee in Cologne. His phone rings and goes, Nico, what are you doing? I'm sitting here. I'm having a little coffee. I'm doing my thing. How would you like to come over to Nurburgring and race this weekend? It's like, what? Yeah, come on over. We'll send a car.
They'll be there in 45 minutes.
I went over, picked him up.
Start warming up the car.
Brought him over. And yeah, he literally comes off the bench and finishes 8th. How about that, huh?
Well, what's amazing too is that Mick Schumacher, there was, with him going to practice, was kind of giving people a look at him to move up.
Right.
He gets denied that. Hulkenberg comes in at the last minute and kind of overshadows all the potential new guys by having such a great performance.
They said, though, there was more activity in the Alfa Romeo pit there than there was all season because in free practice 1 in the rain and the fog because they wanted to get a look at Mick Schumacher in the car, which didn't end up happening. But I think they're going to try to make that arrangement for later in the season, which I think would be great.
Yeah.
But
you got 2 drivers, Perez and Hülkenberg, who don't have a ride, racing for Racing Point and doing and kicking butt, which is great for them.
Yep.
By the way, there's going to be a seat open in Renault, right? Because Ricciardo's leaving Renault, right?
Alonso and Ocon?
Oh, that's right.
No, Alonso's going to McLaren. And Ricciardo's going to McLaren.
And Ricciardo's leaving Renault, where he just scored a podium for them, first time since 2003.
Oh, I thought it was Ricciardo and Norris on McLaren, and then Alonso and Ocon on Renault.
Yeah, because you're right. That's right, Chase. Because Alonso left McLaren, right, and retired, and then was with McLaren at Indianapolis. But you're right. I think he's coming. Yeah, he's coming back to Renault. You're right. Right. And Perez is out. He doesn't have a seat. Vettel's out. He doesn't have a seat.
I thought Vettel's wasn't it?
Vettel's going to Aston Martin or Racing Point, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, I shouldn't say he doesn't have a seat. Right. Well, he's out. Vettel's out, but right. And we don't.
I don't know who would want to pick up Vettel at this point. He's really not marketing himself well recently.
No. Now, have they said?
He's angry.
Now I know we're segueing into news, and I should backtrack. But has Ferrari announced who's replacing Vettel? They haven't, right?
Sainz.
Sainz. Okay.
Yep.
Folks, this is why we love the sport, because the off season is almost as interesting as the in season, because these drivers literally are shifting around, and it's literally musical chairs. There's only so many seats. Once they get filled, it's pretty much over. So. So that was a bit awkward with Ricciardo, because they're like, oh, Renault, first time on the podium since 2013. You guys make a lot of progress. Yeah, that's true.
I'm out of here.
And supposedly Ricciardo's engineer is supposed to get a tattoo. They had a bet that if he made the podium, and so they were interviewing him, who's a French guy. He's like, I don't know about the tattoo. I went, you have a bet. Ricciardo said that was only if he stays on the team. He's leaving the team. I don't feel I should have to. So there's there. But, so, and then they interviewed Perez. It's like, you're a pretty good driver. He's like, yeah, I know. Like,
thanks.
Don't you think it's a little strange you don't have a ride? Yeah, I do think it's a little strange, but I'm bringing all my money, my sponsorship somewhere.
He did say in post interviews that he would probably in a month know what is going to come for him.
I think we could possibly look forward to Hülkenberg and Perez on Haas, because honestly, I think Haas needs to dump the team right now.
Yeah, their current team. I mean, they've given them plenty of time, but they're just not getting anywhere.
But do you think? So you think it's the drivers that are holding Haas back, not the equipment?
Except for Grosjean. Grosjean is not holding anything back.
No, because in order to hold something back, you have to have the capability of moving forward.
Right. So that's
Now, if these races were in reverse, I think Grosjean's your man.
Maybe Grosjean should go out on injured reserve with a broken finger, and then they're going to bring somebody in to fill his feet.
I was talking earlier about my trigger finger. He comes up with a
I think they should bring in Marco Andretti.
You're being a wise guy, but I'm telling you.
I am.
I'm telling you. Making fun of your host. That's not nice. I'll block you. I'll mute you. So Hamilton's got his 91st victory. Yay. So, but it's like we've talked about before. It's a yin and yang in the sport because I was thinking about this when I was getting ready this morning. I'm like, dominance in sports, right? And take two different sports with dominance and see how it plays out differently. Golf in the Tiger Woods era, right? Tiger Woods, nobody denied his greatness. He was great. But how often, if you're a golf fan, did we root for somebody, whether it was Mickelson or somebody of Ernie Els or somebody of stature, to compete with Tiger, to at least make him have to win? And a few times he did. It was Rocco Mediate. It's a Bob May, guys who were journeymen who managed to stick with him, whereas the top guys would just crumble at the sight of Tiger on the leaderboard. Now, contrast that to tennis, this era that we've had going on, which right as we speak, Nadal's playing Djokovic for the French final, and Nadal has a chance to win his 13th. But you've had Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, all three all-time greats, and a great rivalry. And they've between the three of them, they've eaten up all of the tournaments. But the rivalry between the three of them has been terrific. But with Hamilton, and before that with Schumacher, even Vettel for a brief period, he had 4 titles. It seems when you have a dominant driver, we don't get the Lauda Hunt rivalry. We don't get Senna and Prost. We get one guy who's dominant and everybody else is second, right? So I'm not sure what the cure is, but I tell you, if there was a real rival to Hamilton, the sport would be so much more interesting. Otherwise, we have to back down like we're doing, and we'll look at the younger guys who are in mid-pack, which is exciting. Not as exciting as when guys were going for championships, What
amazes me, though, is with no one pushing him, Hamilton is able to push himself just further and further and further. I think that's actually harder to do than having somebody pushing you, just to find it within yourself to go.
Right, exactly. We saw that with Schumacher. With him, that German will to sort of was against the clock all the time. You're right. He never actually looked at the other guys as competition. I don't think Hamilton does really. And Tiger, for that matter, didn't either. He was like, hey, it's me and the course. And of course records. And Jack Nicklaus, he's the guy I'm playing against. I'm not playing against these other bozos. And now golf's more competitive because we got different guys. So yeah, I guess you could go different ways with whether a superstar totally dominant is the best for a sport or whether it's great to have great competition. So ideally, you have both. We have, like in tennis, we have super greatness, but you have a couple of guys that can match up. And the other thing I guess that concerns me too is, and maybe we'll talk about this in the next segment, is we got another year, it seems like, of this before we get back to a potential mix-up of the field, because the car and equipment and all that stuff's going to be the same in 2021. Rule changes going to come in 2022, right? So do it really, if Hamilton stays driven literally and figuratively, is there any way where we think we're going to see something different next year, Steve?
No, I can't really. But what I can see is Renault, McLaren continuing to progress and get better, because they have over the years, and they're now at a point where they're getting closer and closer to being on top, being on the podium, and hopefully they'll just continue to get better and challenge. But you're not going to break the dominance of Mercedes until rules are changed.
Unless Mercedes sabotages themselves, which they've done on occasion.
Unless they pull a Ferrari.
Yeah.
What's that? Deliberately go slow? Like we talked about before, unless they decide in 2021, we're going to do something different. We're going to handicap the Mercedes. We're going to put an extra 50 pounds over the rear tires and just see what you guys do with that. And be like, yeah, that's not a problem. We'll take care of that. Well, I guess that's the story. We're watching excellence at the highest level of motorsport, and this is what it looks like when you get it right. And then very often, the other teams we get to see, this is what happens when it goes wrong.
Yeah.
So, anything more to add about this race? I thought, Nurburgring, which I guess we hadn't been back to since 2013, which is hard to believe since it's such a historical track. Obviously, the original Nurburgring, they don't drive anymore because it's too freaking dangerous. But this track, I thought it was, laid out nice, speeds, corners, anything you want from a track, right, Jay?
Yeah. So actually, the way Nurburgring works is that it's one big course, but it's divided into two smaller courses, or I guess
The main
not
North
really
is
small.
13 miles because they use that for endurance racing and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So the really long one is the Nordschleife, I think it is,
Lynchlife. Yep.
and the other one is just called the Grand Prix track. But yeah, they're both really interesting courses, a lot of history, and I think it was, like you said, very dangerous. It was Niki Lauda, I think, had his fiery accident on the Nordschleife.
Yeah, and actually, it's still open for take cars out there all the time to test, for speed and stuff. And I believe, Bill, if I'm not mistaken, I believe you can actually reserve a time. I think it's like if you're traveling there, I think they'll let you go out and take your car out on the large Northern Slider course. I think you probably have to do I'm sure you have to do some pre-qualification, but you can actually go out there and take your sports car if you want and test your Porsche, your Volvo,
or even your Subaru.
McLaren Subaru.
Yeah.
I've talked about that as something that I want to do one day. I think it's just, you can go and you can drive. It's public, but it's like it's kind of like road rules, or a lot of road rules, where it's like you can't like drift on the course, or it's like you can't race really recklessly. It's like you can go on it, but you can't go like just wreck other people or endanger people or yourself.
Do you need to wear a helmet and have like a battery, a bolt down and things like that,
I think if you have
I think it's advised that you wear a helmet, but I don't know if it's required.
Yeah. One thing I found interesting is that, and this is again one of all these different layers of F1, is when the safety car came out for Norris, how long it took for the safety car to come in. I'm thinking, what are they waiting for? And all the drivers are complaining. And I'm thinking, well, I wonder how they make that call. I mean, obviously they had guys out in the gravel there helping to get the car out of the way. But it seemed like the car was out of the way for a good couple of minutes before they actually called the car back in. And I was just like, what's taking them so long?
Yeah, it was interesting too, because you also got to see Formula One at its highest definition of technology, where the first safety car that came out was a virtual safety car.
Right.
Which the cars automatically have to slow down and to a certain pace, but there's no pace car out there. It's not even an honor system, because they monitor with the pace of all the cars, so they know how fast they're going. And that's, I guess, for really minor infractions on the course where they can take care of it in 2 seconds. But you're right; they were all complaining about how long the actual safety car was out there, because they were concerned about the tires getting cold on a restart. Right.
Right. Yeah. And it seemed, I mean, I couldn't see the entire course, but it seemed like that Norris's car and the guys who were there working on it to get it out of there were probably well behind any barrier that would have caused the safety car to come out. So why don't you bring it in? I don't know. It just made me think, how do they come up with that decision?
Rules of the track. The guys had a cigarette break at that time.
Yeah, so maybe it's one of those European things.
We should be moving this way, don't you think? Regulations say we got a cigarette break right here.
Well, I think part of the issue was, again, going back to the huge lead of over a minute with Hamilton is, and then you compound that with the pit stop. Now everybody's really off pace, so they really had to come the full circle of the track to catch up to the lead lap. And I think that's one of the reasons why he stayed out, was because they were trying to get everybody back bunched up before they let him go.
And one thing I've never seen with a safety car, but it makes sense, and it's kind of getting to your point, is watching the back markers who were ahead, watch them blow past the safety car. I've never seen that, but
they go right around.
You got to get them in the back, bring everybody up. That's probably why. Yeah, that makes sense. That's probably why they were out so long.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. They did. They had to pull over, let slower traffic actually pass to get back in position, so there wouldn't be.
And that's a whole full lap that they've got to haul. Now, the benefit was all those cars had warm tires because they were working it.
Right.
Unlike Verstappen and Hamilton.
They got warm tires, but they got slow cars.
Yep.
And in the end, it didn't impact it anyway.
It's different what you talked about, right? Which is different what happened a couple of races ago with the red flag restarts.
Right.
Where we start the starting stop on the grid where you are on the track. So slow cars would be in the middle of the between faster cars and slower cars, and therefore we have the traffic jam or whatever. So very interesting. This is all stuff that goes on in these races, folks, that if you're watching casually, sometimes you don't pick up on, but we tend to pay attention to these things just because sometimes when the races are not in doubt from a first, second point of view, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes or in front of you that you're not paying attention to that we'd like to point out for your edification information. So very good first segment. I'm going to take a break, get a sip of coffee, and we'll come back. We'll talk about a little bit more about news and